Admiral Dhawan, Chairman of the National Maritime Foundation and former Chief of the Naval Staff, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am always, in this morning's session, I thought that I would have a less frenetic opportunity to give a lead presentation for this session, but time, I think, is nobody's friend. And so I am going to beg your indulgence once again for a fairly rapid-fire presentation that I hope, as the organizers intended, will provide the tone for the discussions to follow. Let me start by saying that ASEAN and India, in terms of their connectivity, are of course resting on the huge dependence that each of these entities have on external merchandise trade. And if you look at this tabulation, you will see that at the one hand we've got India, which has jumped up from a figure of about 12.7% in terms of a trade to GDP ratio to about 36%. And while we are panic-stricken upon the fact that this highlights the maritime domain more than ever before, if you look across from left to right, you will see that Indonesia stands at 40.8, and then you have Malaysia. And as I've mentioned earlier today, Malaysia is a country that we are very keen to examine the models of, because they seem to be, whatever they seem to be doing, seems to be working. And so they are at 139%, and if you look at Vietnam and Singapore, they are 150 and 269%. That means that these are hugely important trading nations, and as they trade and their trade travels overseas, it brings in their wake both opportunities and challenges. The master plan for ASEAN connectivity, or the MPAC, was adopted in Hanoi in October of 2010. Of course, this recognizes better connectivity as a necessary condition for regional economic integration, but it serves to emphasize that maritime transport is the most important mode of transportation in terms of traffic volume in international trade. However, as was indicated in the last session, most countries of the region rank quite poorly relatively to China and Hong Kong in the UNCTAD Liner Shipping Connectivity Index, and I want to show it to you so that you appreciate where we are. In blue, you can see India, and in 2017, we are at about 53% the efficiencies generated by China in 2004, which is the base year, and as you can see, China has already gone 50% better than that. And a similar story applies to Hong Kong. Now, the closest we can get to 100% is once again Malaysia. Singapore, of course, is superior to everybody in this regard within the ASEAN region. But this is an area that I want you to actually hoist, and I'm hoping that there will be some discussion on this in the panel. So at the same time, most of the gateway ports of the ASEAN member states are already fairly full, which means that investments in capacity expansion will have to be made if we're going to meet some expected growth in trade. Here, Malaysia doesn't stand out well, because as Malaysia is developing, say for example, the Melaka Gateway Port, it will have a really hard time making that port economically viable, given that Klang and PTP is so close together, bracketing it, and the hinterland may not be able to support this. So now, should we develop transshipment ports as a model or not, is something that ASEAN and India must discuss. There are a number of challenges faced by the designated ports in providing more efficient shipping network services. For example, the handling of cargo depends on the capacity of the ship calling at the port. The cargo handling capacity itself is a function of the draft and of the quayside capabilities of the port, the land transport and logistic capabilities, and of course the customs and ADAM procedures. So if we were to look at the challenges, I think you'll find that there are two challenges which I'm hoping that the panel will talk about. One is the challenge of physical connectivity, or what we call hard infrastructure. All that is, everybody's familiar with this, I don't need to dwell on it. But more important, and as the earlier plenary sessions mentioned, are the challenges of institutional connectivity, or what are called soft infrastructure. Here there are real problems. And here we need to have a great deal of intensive discussion, because simply agreeing that we will build port X or port Y will not solve our problem. And we have a lack of standards, we have a lack of conformity assessment procedures, there's inadequate transport facilitation. In other words, we have our work cut out. If you look at cruise ship tourism, this is an area which of course the minister mentioned in the morning, and it is no longer, as this ship might imply, just related to the high-end niche areas. As purchasing power percolates down the social pyramid, cruise ship tourism will keep increasing. But what is of importance? What shall we do right now? Right now we should be investing in all our energies in ro-ro shipping, where rolling cargoes do not require quayside cranes for offloading and so on and so forth, and therefore this is a mitigating factor. While port quayside infrastructure is developed, we will be able to progress along ro-ro modules. So you can see that ro-ro is not new as a shipping mode, but compared to conventional shipping and air transport, ro-ro is faster, it's more affordable, it's greener. It doesn't require huge investment in port facilities, and the connections are point to point, and they do not need to pass through a regional transshipment port. This is almost the same as I hope that my colleague will talk when he talks about aviation. It's akin to low-cost carrier operations in the airline industry. So this is a typical ro-ro ferry which is used for smaller movements, and as I mentioned, it's not new. In Europe it's pretty old. And insofar as East and Southeast Asia is concerned, there are 15 ro-ro routes already operating between China and Korea, 6 between Japan and China, 5 between Japan and Korea. And though we haven't spoken much about the Philippines, there are well-established domestic ro-ro nautical highways that connect Luzon and Mindanao and so on and so forth. Indonesia, on the other hand, has launched the Sea Toll domestic ro-ro program, and European liners will, European-sized ro-ro vessels hopefully will start to ply in ASEAN waters itself. Within ASEAN, there are 3 ro-ro connections that exhibit strong potential. There on your screen, the Philippines Bitung, that is the Davao-Bitung route, is the most popular one at the moment. But there are also ones moving between the Philippines and Malaysia, and between Philippines and Vietnam. This is a map on the screen which shows you where exactly these are, and if you can't see the map very well, I will show you slightly larger enlargements in a minute. On the 30th of April, Philippines President and the Indonesian President launched the Davao General Santos Bitung ro-ro service, and this was one of the big success stories that we all ought to be able to emulate, both inside India as well as when India interfaces with ASEAN. This is the one between Sabah and Philippines in the Palawan province, while this is the Philippines Strong Republic Nautical Highway, an area that we in India are very keen to engage with the Philippines in particular, Malaysia, Indonesia in particular, but ASEAN in general, because we want to be able to replicate some of these models that we have. The Sea Toll project, if you look at the 4th bullet on that screen, the Sea Toll project started in November 15, is planned to enhance inter-island connectivity and connects 5 major ports already. This is a diagram of the Sea Toll project of Malaysia, and compared to what we would like to discuss with Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, I think that these are models which are useful for us to take off from. The chairman has already mentioned the Sagarmala project, so I will not waste any time on that. I just wanted to say that ro-ro services are not unknown in India either, although they are a late starter. And this is a photograph of the new ro-ro ferry service in Gujarat, launched only a couple of months ago. And this one is the ro-ro ferry service in Kochi in Kerala, at the other extremity of our country. The ferry services in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, of course, are not yet ro-ro, and it's quite surprising because we need to move here to ro-ro factors rather quickly. Let me widen this and conclude. If I was to widen the connectivity options, then this is the one that you are all familiar with. We've got China, we've got the BRI, but it's recent, it's not very clear, and not everybody's on board. Then we've got ASEAN. And ASEAN has got the ASEAN Master Plan for Connectivity, the AMPC. It's relatively advanced. It's had a longer gestation period, longer period of discussions, and it's equally well funded. What about India? India has what I would like to call NAMO's bouquet. And let me show you that. And that is the strategy that we have. In the morning we spoke much about the North-South Transit Corridor, the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, the Project MOSM, which I spoke about in my own presentation in the morning, Open Seas, Open Pacific and Open Indian Ocean, and what the chairman mentioned and was mentioned in the morning by Professor Prabir De was of course Sagar. This is the depiction of the North-South Transit Corridor, a better version of which Dr. De showed. Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. We have had some decent amount of discussion on this, so I won't dwell. I just want to show you a variation to what Prabir showed us in the morning of what exactly Sagar comprises. It's not only port-led development, it is country-led development all across the region, and our effort is, as India, to try and stitch together as many of these connectivity models as we can, both in the Indian Ocean as well as in the oceanic spaces of ASEAN. I want to leave you with this thought. There is a conceptual construct. On your side, the conceptual construct is ASEAN. There is a political structure below that. That political structure is the ADMM or the ADMM Plus. And then there is an executive structure, and that executive structure is the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, or WPNS, because as Admiral Dhawan said, much of this work, actually much of the doing has to also be done by people in white uniform, whether they are in white uniform in the Merchant Marine, or they are in white uniform in the Coast Guard, or they are in white uniform in the navies of the region. Let me tell you about the Indian Ocean part. Once again, we have a match. We have conceptual structure Sagar, then we've got the political structure, which is IORA, and then we've got the executive structure, which is the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, or IONS. And if you look at WPNS and IONS, you'll see there's quite a lot of countries that are common to them, and all of these countries are the countries of ASEAN. So, maritime and island connectivity are also deeply linked to digital connectivity. And we're not going to move forward if we do not embrace digital connectivity and the information communication technology infrastructure across the region. Lastly, while recognizing the tangible benefits of closer connectivity, as I said in the morning, you have to get onto the security elevator while it's on the ground floor. You cannot try and jump onto it. I spoke at some length yesterday, this morning about the need to address climate change and its consequences, and we need to take that into account. As my last slide, the most pressing need is for us in ASEAN-India connection to develop a roadmap towards an integrated and competitive maritime transport plan, a roadmap, along the lines of the AMPC, which includes not just the hard and the soft infrastructure, but also new initiatives to facilitate maritime tourism and people-to-people connectivity through the safe movement of passenger ships of all kinds, while comprehensively addressing maritime security problems which are caused or likely to be caused by transnational crime or illegal immigration, and the security of implications of climate change, environmental degradation, pollution, and other cross-border challenges, many of which Admiral Dhawan dilated upon at length. Gentlemen, we can be ladies and gentlemen, we can be accused here of many things. I don't like the way you speak. No, the ships won't work. No, all that is possible. The one thing that you and I cannot afford to be accused of is a failure of imagination. Let us not have failures of imagination. Let us imagine big and implement in small steps. Let's do that. Thank you very much.